Atomic Lizards podcast. In this month's episode of Our Favorites, we are covering the 2018 film Blindspotting. I'm Udi, the defective film expert, and I'm joined by my fellow co hosts, Myranda, the film fanatic, and Dan, the kaiju extraordinaire. Per the film's description on Letterboxd, Blindspotting is about a character named Colin, played by David Diggs, who must make it through his final 3 days of probation for a chance at a new beginning. He and his troublemaking childhood best friend, Miles, played by Rafael Casal, work as movers, and when Colin witnesses a police shooting, the two men's friendship is tested as they grapple with identity and their changed realities in the rapidly gentrifying neighborhood that they grew up in. The film was directed by Carlos Lopez Estrada and was written by both David Diggs and Rafael Casal. It was made on a reported budget of $1.2 million and made around $5 million at the box office. Starring in the picture were David Diggs of Hamilton and Snowpiercer, the show, fame, and Rafael Casal, both of who also wrote the film and produced it. Alongside them in the cast are Janina Gavankar as Val, Jasmine Cephas Jones as Ashley, Ethan Embry as Officer Molina, Tisha Campbell as Mama Liz, Utkarsh Ambudkar as Rin, Wayne Knight as Patrick, Kevin Carroll as James, and John Chaffin as Dez. A few fun facts about the cast are that Janina Gavankar was the main character in the 2017 Star Wars Battlefront 2 game, playing the role of Iden Versio in the main story mode, and Jasmine Cephas Jones was Peggy Schuyler in the original cast of Hamilton. As previously mentioned, David Diggs was also in the original cast of Hamilton, and he played both Marquis de Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson. Before jumping into our discussion today, we want to issue a spoiler warning. If you haven't yet watched the film and you don't want to hear any major spoilers, please stop the podcast now and come back once you finish the film. Otherwise, let's jump right in. So, guys, what were your brief overall thoughts on Blindspotting?
All right. I'll start us off. I just want to say that I liked Blind Spotting. I appreciated the message that it had to tell. I liked the editing. It had a good soundtrack. The acting was pretty good. It was interesting to see how witnessing a tragic event can really mess with your mind, especially when we realize that it could have just as easily have been us in that scenario. It's not something that I really think about too much, and I'm sure we'll get into it later. But I really loved that scene at the end of the movie. It was very powerful, and it will most likely stick with me and stand out within my mind for a really long time. Like that was such a good scene. But once again, I'm sure we'll talk about that later on. But yeah, just all in all, pretty solid watch. I'd recommend at least giving it one watch, mainly because of the themes and messages that it has. It's pretty important, I feel, with the climate that our society is living in right now. Also interesting to note that this movie came out a whole 2 years before everything with George Floyd happened, and I can only imagine how the reaction to it would have been had it released in 2020.
Nice, okay. What about you, Miranda?
I approached this movie differently than I approached Prisoners for our last Our Favorites episode. So for this one, I did a bit more research before watching it. So I watched a few video essays, read like the Wikipedia page and whatnot, and I think that helped with my viewing experience. That way, I was kind of aware of what this movie was about. So like for Prisoners, I didn't know anything, so I just felt super anxious the whole time, and I still totally felt that with this movie just based on the topic. Um, and I know some people are like, "Oh, you should go into movies blind," but I like doing a bit of that pre-research. But so I approached it differently. And I think this movie is very well made. The acting is very good and the story is relevant to current like situations that are going on. It's realistic. Same like with Prisoners, it's a real thing that happens, which again, I don't really gravitate towards those movies. And that's really unfortunate that this is a story being told and it's real. It has happened to people and it's just a really sucky thing that this thing happens like a lot. Like it shouldn't happen and it is. So I think it's very relevant and the story being told is something people should watch and understand. And a little more like for how the movies like made and how it's written. There's a very musical nature to that, like a quote unquote rap musical, I guess you could say. And I really liked how that flowed throughout the movie. It kind of reminds me of like Baby Driver, where Baby Driver is not technically a musical, but it's musical-ish. Same with this one. It has a nice flow and like everything like goes together. And I think it also helps like show the two main characters relationship too, because they can just like bounce off each other. Because I think there's a scene they're like walking down the sidewalk and they're kind of like rap talking, I guess is a way you could describe it. And they're just bouncing off of each other. So that like shows their friendship. And yeah, so there was some pretty tense scenes in this too. But overall, it's a well-made movie, and you should definitely watch it if you haven't watched it.
All right, great. It was nice to hear that you felt a bit more prepared for this, at least for the viewing experience of this compared to Prisoners, because I know that wasn't super up your alley. So now, as far as my first impressions goes, I mean, this is another one of my picks. So I love this movie. So I'll just keep it brief because and you guys already covered a lot of good points. But yeah, I think that this movie is really well done, and it's unfortunate this is kind of slipped through like under the radar since its release in 2018 because it's unfortunately gotten more and more relevant, I feel like. But yeah, I think it has a really creative voice, and I really love all the music and how musically inclined it is. And I'm a big fan of David Diggs and his rap group Clipping. And so I almost feel like this is kind of like a movie extension of that. Not exactly because it's just David and not his partner. I think he just has one partner for Clipping. But yeah, there's a lot of different songs where David is like on the soundtrack for this movie is mainly David and Raphael, and they did a really great job. And Raphael also, I believe, wrote the movie, or well, he co-wrote it with David, but he wrote a lot of different very poignant scenes. Like he had a very big part in writing the ending, and then obviously like, David helped to kind of tweak things, especially on the day of and like days before. But yeah, there's just a bunch of different. There's a lot of fun cameos throughout. Like I remember when I first watched this, towards the beginning of the movie, when they're at this fast food restaurant called Quickway. There's like a quick interaction with like the worker from that restaurant, and I was like, that guy looks familiar. Is that who I think it is? And it was. It was. There's a bunch of little cameos throughout, but this specific cameo was George Watsky, who is a another rap artist by the name. He goes by Watsky. So I mean, um, but yeah, they're friends with, or he's friends with David. So and Raphael. So they were able to get him in there for a quick little cameo. But there's a bunch of different ones throughout, and I'll point out a couple of them later on. But yeah, really love this movie. I think it is a very poignant movie, and it'll unfortunately probably remain a poignant movie for a long time. So if you haven't given it a watch yet, definitely recommend. And yeah, let's get further into the discussion. So before we get into other points, what did you guys think of the characters? We can start with Colin and Miles, played by David Diggs and Raphael Casal.
I liked Colin. I thought David Diggs did a very good job of portraying that character. Because obviously the movie starts off, the first thing that we know about Colin is that he is in jail and he's in a halfway house. So you're thinking, okay, well, what did he do? Like, did he actually commit a crime? Was he wrongfully committed? And then later we find out what he did. So then you're like, oh, okay. But like, I feel like Colin deep down is a good person. Like, I don't think he's a criminal per se. Like, I mean, the whole reason why he is in jail, I feel, is just because he lost his temper a little bit. So, like, yeah, I feel like he's deep down a good person, and that's even more so when we get to the scene near the end of the movie. But like the whole time I'm just wondering, where is the story with Colin going to go? Because like we see him in the halfway house and it's like, oh, this is like 3 days left until his probation ends, and then it's like first 3 days left, 2 days left, and you're thinking, okay, like he has this moving job with his best friend, and then we get to the scene where he witnesses the cop shooting that black man, and then like and we see how that affects him just later on in the movie, and I just once again, I said this in my first impressions, it's like you never really think about how witnessing something like that can really affect a person, because we do see how it affects Colin, because you might be thinking, oh, Colin, he's because the whole, I guess, stereotype with criminals is like, oh, they've been to jail, they're toughened, they're hardened, like, but no, man, like after witnessing that shooting, like it really affects Colin to the point where like he's having nightmares and he's like afraid, and it's very humanizing, and I appreciate how they were able to show that in this movie, because yeah, like just because somebody's like been to jail and whatnot doesn't mean that they're tough and could take whatever life's gonna throw at them. There's stuff out there that can really mess you up, and I liked how this movie was able to show that.
Speaking of the scene where, like you mentioned, the scene where we find out what happens to him and why he got sent to jail. What did you think of that whole like sequence where it's like the guy's telling the story and like asking him, like, "Oh, were you that guy?" and all that.
Well, I got major Ant-Man vibes. I mean, come on, Luis. So, but no, I liked that scene, and once again, it was cool. Well, I mean, it was interesting to see that scene because I was wondering the whole time, like, what did he do to like get in jail? And like they say earlier in the movie, it was like on a fire technicality or something like that. And I remember thinking, what does that mean? But then we see later on why, and yeah, it's because he literally beats the crap out of this guy for bringing alcohol like out. I don't know, was he a bouncer?
Yeah, he was a bouncer at that bar.
Okay, yeah. So he was a bouncer. Yeah, and then obviously you can't take alcohol outside the bar, I guess. And
Yeah.
yeah, like he's just beating the guy up, and then the guy gets caught on fire. Like, oh my god, what is this? I remember because once again, I had mentioned this earlier before we started recording, but I had watched this movie with my mother. So during that scene, my mom was like, "Why is he doing that? He needs to stop!" Like, so,
He's
but
in
yeah,
rage mode.
yeah, full on rage mode, just beating the crap out of this guy. So obviously, what he did there was wrong, but the guy was kind of being a dick. So
Yeah. It's just one of those things of like you said, like his only true crime, and it's not even like a big crime of just losing his temper, and it was like the wrong time to do it, and unfortunately, like it led to some unfortunate consequences, but like he really didn't commit like a terrible crime or anything. It was basically a
exactly,
crime of being human, basically.
yeah, he just lost his temper. That's all that happened. But still, like he's beating this guy. He doesn't notice that he's on fire. Like holy cow, I feel like I would have noticed.
Maybe he just thought the guy's leg was on fire, and then afterwards, he's like, "Oh, my arm."
It probably doesn't help that Miles also jumps in
Well, yeah,
Oh
and
yeah, I,
like
I did forget
starts
about that.
to fight the guy too.
yeah.
And the whole time the one guy is telling the story and the at the movers location or whatever um business, um I was just like, no, no, don't bring this up. Can't you see that both um
Colin and Val.
yeah, can't you see they're like uncomfortable? Like maybe just stop talking.
Yeah, exactly. Like Colin the entire time is like, no, I don't want to get into this, and the guy
Yeah,
just
you
keeps
could see
going.
the like just the reactions on their faces of just how it's like one, it's probably a not it's not um it's controversial is not the right word, but it's a thing that happened that they don't really like they don't need some random guy on the street retelling. Um
For like a lack
so
of better words, it's like triggering to them.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
what
I
it
guess
literally
so.
means. Yeah.
Did Miles ever get consequences for doing pretty much the exact same thing?
He did not.
But that's also why when Colin is talking to Val at one point, she like brings it up because it might be like in that same scene. I don't remember, but Colin says that Miles went to go visit him like every single day, basically. And she's like, yeah, because he felt guilty because he like was right there with you and he didn't get in trouble at all.
And once again, like just based off of the themes that this movie has, it could go into the whole like, double standard that,
Hmm.
that people have when it comes to crime.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like some part later, um, I think it might be the same scene where like Val mentions how like if like either of them had a gun or something, like who does Colin think that they would have shot at, him or Miles?
Exactly.
Yeah. But in that scene at Commander Smiley HQ, I guess you could say, the actor Utkarsh, who plays the character Rin, he's like the guy telling the story like Luis Ant-Man style. And apparently a lot of like what he was saying was just ad-libbed on the day. And because I listened to both commentaries, so there's two commentary tracks. There's one from the director and one from the two leads, David and Raphael. And apparently, according to the director, the hardest part of that day shooting was everyone behind the scenes trying to keep quiet and not like bust out laughing from like watching Utkarsh just like tell this story. So I thought that was kind of a
Yeah,
funny little note.
exactly. Because I like the part he kept referring to the white guy as like Topher Grace or like other like generic like white actors. Like that was pretty good.
Yeah. And then I like how I mean it's not good, but it's kind of funny how he said something he's not supposed to, and then his friend's like, "Oh no, you can only say that when you're with me." He's like, "Oh yeah, I don't know why I said
Yeah.
that. I was just out of my mind. My bad."
Yeah, I did remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. But yeah, okay. Um oh, also there's like one line of dialogue that I think is very poignant but also just kind of funny. There's a part where like I don't remember who they're talking to, but Colin and Miles are together and then Miles just says, "Yeah, we kind of have like a Calvin and Hobbes type thing going on." I was like, that's like the perfect dynamic for like how they are that they're at the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was during the scene when they're packing up all
The
the
photographs, right?
photography.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good old what's his name? Stephen Knight? Oh, Wayne Knight. Wayne Knight.
Yeah,
That's what
Wayne Knight.
yeah.
Newman.
Newman. He was in
Also,
Jurassic Park, right?
yeah, I was gonna say also Dennis Nedry from Jurassic Park,
Yeah.
and Space Jam. He was
And
in
Space
Space
Jam.
Jam.
Yes. But yeah.
Classic Wayne Knight.
It was so weird like seeing him in this movie considering like
Dude, it
all of his
was.
previous roles.
Well, the other thing is what I can't even remember the last thing I've seen Wayne Knight in.
Me neither. Aside from like those classic movies, I don't even know.
Yeah. And he looked different too. Like I didn't even recognize him at first until my mom pointed him out, and I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, that is Wayne Knight." Like,
He just I guess he lost weight and he aged up a bit.
well, not only that, but I don't think he was wearing glasses, and he had the facial hair, so that's really what helped me not recognize him at first.
Mm, yeah. But I think that that whole scene was kind of. I mean, I feel like every scene adds a little bit of something, but I think that because I think a big thing too, and not to get too off topic, but I mean it kind of goes in with the characters thing. But Oakland, in and of itself, is a character in this movie. Like I think from what I know, because I've never been there and I didn't grow up there, but from what I know, they did a really great job of like showing how three-dimensional and like colorful and like lively of a past like Oakland has had, and they did a really good job of like showing how different the people who live there are and things like that. So I felt like Wayne Knight's character Patrick. I think like his work, like his photography, was really interesting. Like I really liked the photograph that he had where it was like an Oakland oak like in the middle of like the city or like by the freeway or something. I thought it's very much like an artistic oh wow, this is like my interpretation of like what's going on here. But I don't know. I think it kind of worked, and it was kind of a fun thing. And then yeah, just overall they did a really good job of like capturing that, and it worked because it got a lot of different people, actors and like crew wise, and musicians and artists who were from the Bay Area or like Oakland to come and help. And not everyone, but like there's a good amount of people who were from that region, and I think they all kind of helped kind of shape and give it like that sort of Oakland feel. Like the one scene where Miles is trying to sell that one boat that they get from that one moving spot, and then he has that one interaction with the guy who pulls up, and they have like this huge like banter, and it's just a bunch of like gobbledygook that like you're like what are they saying, what is happening, but apparently that's like real Oakland slang that like if you know anyone from there you could ask them like, oh yeah, this is what this means, that's what that means, like that's apparently like actual slang that people say. Like it's probably not like super common, but like people from Oakland could understand. So I thought that was kind of fun.
That's interesting. I didn't know that Oakland had its own slang.
Yeah, yeah. That was another thing from like the commentary that I learned, because I remember like when I first watched the movie, I was like, oh, that has to be just like a fun jokey thing that they wrote in and whatever. But I was like, oh no, that's just like actual like Oakland slang. Okay, interesting. The more you know. But yeah, did you have any express thoughts on Colin or Miles, Miranda, or both of them?
Colin, played by David Diggs, did a good job at like acting. Um, like you can see the conflict through his acting. And I think the character of Colin is very interesting too, because like uh, I don't know, I don't watch many movies like this, so it's kind of hard to put thoughts into words for this. Um, I guess what I could say is that Colin and Miles are very interesting characters in this movie. Um, like I've said before, I don't really watch this type of stuff, these types of movies. So it's a lot out of my comfort zone. But I think David Diggs and Raphael Cassel did a good job at portraying their characters. Um, like especially like the two sides of their characters, because like the vase um image where it's a vase or is it two faces is like a theme throughout the movie. Um, and like you can see how they both deal with like the way people view them and then the way they actually are. Like like they're like Colin is a person is he cares about the people around him, and like he's not necessarily like a violent person or anything, but then he has people perceive him that way because of like his hair and his color of his skin and all of that stuff. And then Miles also like really cares about his family, but there's the scene at the party where he's wearing the hipster shirt. It's like a hipster party, and he like gets mad because he's talking and doing things he normally does because that's where he grew up. And the people at the party are like, you don't have to do that, like it's fine, you don't have to like put on the act. Or it's like they both get perceived in different ways than they actually are, but that's just how that's how human brains work sometimes, is that we'll put categories and put people into buckets or put like different rocks into different categories, all like animals and stuff. We have everything categorized, and the first perspective that you see, the first image or first impression that you have of someone isn't always right. And I think this movie explores that pretty well.
Yeah, that was really well said. I agree with basically everything you said there. I think it's such a big part of this movie, as it said in like the description that I read before, was or is about like identity and how these characters and just people in general are perceived differently for how they look and how they are, and it's unfortunate, especially in terms of like Colin in this instance, where he's this he's this man that if you didn't see the first like few minutes of the movie and you just caught up with him like a few minutes in and you just like on the daily with him, like I feel like people would have a different perception of him. But since the movie starts out with like him being like a convicted felon and the whole time people are thinking like, oh well, what did he do, blah 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 blah, but like in the same way like in the movie throughout, there's like a couple of scenes where like especially like with him and Val, where she kind of points out like how like he's kind of well, he is targeted because he's a big tall athletic black man with dreads, and even if he's not doing anything, even if he's like a sweetheart and he keeps to himself and he stays out of trouble and blah blah blah, immediately like any situation that he's in, like he's perceived as a threat. Even more so, like if he's with Colin or if he's with Miles, I mean, and Miles is doing something stupid, like who's going to be the one that's going to be blamed or people are going to look at more? It's not going to be Miles. It's going to be Colin, unfortunately. And so I think this movie does a really good job of, and not even just with Colin, but also like Miranda pointed out with Miles, like at the party where it's a bunch of like it's a party run by hipsters. I won't go and say that everyone there is a hipster, but it's a party run by a huge hipster. Um, and how Miles is perceived as a hipster, even though like he hates hipsters and he hates how like gentrified Oakland has become. So just yeah, I just it's very interesting to see how these characters are dealing with their identities and just in like daily situations throughout. But yeah, I really like both Colin and Miles. I think they have such an interesting like relationship. Like you can tell even in moments in this movie where they have like pretty bad fights, because there's a couple of pretty bad fights towards the end of the movie that they have. I don't think there's 1 second where I thought, man, these guys are never going to be friends ever again. Like there's just they are basically, and there's even one part where Miles like sells something and so he like tries to give Colin some money, and he's like, and Colin's like, no no no, it's take it for you and your family. No no no, like you're my family too, here you go. And like everyone gets some in the family, and you can really feel that throughout the movie that they are really like truly like almost like brothers, because like I said, there's not one moment throughout the movie where no matter how bad things get or what things are said, like I never for 1 second doubted they were not gonna like come back and keep being friends or something. So I think that their bond is really nice, but obviously Miles is kind of Colin's like little devil on his shoulder. And it's not till like in this part of Colin's life that we're watching through the movie that we see him kind of trying to finally, like he finally had his come to Jesus moment and going to prison and everything like that, and sees that maybe Miles isn't the best person to follow blindly into whatever chaos is he's gonna get him, or he's gonna get him or them into. Um, but also I think being with Miles all the time, and especially at the end of that party sequence, I think that Colin was finally able to see himself through like a different lens, because I feel like he could see a part of himself uh, in Miles at the end, when he like got into the fight with that one guy, because I feel like he could kind of see like a slight mirror of how like he beat that one guy up at the bar with Miles' help, but like he beat that one guy up at the bar, and like being outside of that and just being kind of like a spectator, he could kind of see how he was perceived in that moment. And I think that was kind of an interesting parallel.
I wanted to talk mention something earlier because when you were talking about the relationship between Colin and Miles, I think Miranda had said that the parts of this movie do feel very real, and I'm thinking of certain just like little interactions between Miles and Colin that like I could relate to because it's it's silly stuff that I would do with my friends, like back with the Wayne Knight scene and where he's like all right, I just need you both to look at each other, and then they're just looking at each other, and then one of them like flinches or whatever. Like it's like okay, I can see myself doing that with my friends. And then another one of my personal favorite touches, as I think it's like the end of the movie, because there's this like green like kale juice or whatever that Colin is drinking to like for better his health or what and whatnot, and then Miles is like, oh man, that looks like shit, like I'm sure that tastes terrible. And then near the end of the movie he's like, I'll drink it if we're switching, because something happens to the point where like they're kind of like on opposite ends of where they usually are. So Miles is like, "Hey, everything's opposite today, so I'm gonna drink your weird green kale juice, I'll do it." And then he drinks it and he's like, hey, that's not that bad. Like there's little moments like that I really do enjoy.
Yeah. I think it, like, throughout the movie, like we've mentioned a lot how this movie is very serious and deals with very like intense and real themes and topics, which it does, but it's also very much like a very funny movie throughout. And I think a lot of that comedy comes through with Colin and Miles just interacting and having like regular friend things, like little quips and things like that.
Oh yeah, of course. Like another like kind of pretty funny moment was when they have to like clean out that entire house, and that one lady's like, I think there's like a sailboat back there, and then like they're done and then they're about to leave, but then Colin's like, hey, wasn't there a sailboat? Then hard cut to just Miles, sailboat, sailboat for sale. Like that was really good.
Yeah. I also really like the scene where he goes to sell the like the hair straighteners or
The
whatever.
Oh yeah,
straighteners,
yeah, the iron, yeah.
Yeah, the irons. What did you say, Miranda?
hair straightener, hair
Hair
irons,
straighteners.
whatever they're, yeah, those thingies.
Yeah. Where he goes to sell the hair straighteners in the salon, and I thought that was really fun too.
Well, what's this white boy doing in my salon?
And then I like
And
how she's like, I don't like suspense. I don't even like suspense movies.
yeah. And then I also like how they straightened out Colin's hair. Like that was really
Oh
good.
yeah. That was a good cut. Like how do you even know these work? And then just hard cut
Yeah.
to Colin with straight hair.
Yeah.
And then Ashley like peeks out the window. She's like, "Oh," she's like, "Hey," and it's like, "Oh my god, like what
Yeah.
happened to your hair?"
Yeah.
And then he calls Val because he needs her to do his dreads up again. And then she was like, "Wait, but why did you undo your hair?" And he's like, "It was profitable to do so." And she's like, "What?" And then he's just like, Can you just do it, please?" And she's like, "All right, fine."
I think that scene in the salon, with like the rap musicaliness of this movie works really well too, because like an auction, there's that back and forth, but instead of auction it, he's just trying to sell the straighteners. I liked that dynamic between the back and forth. There's a lot of good moments like that through the entire film.
Oh yeah, yeah. They did a really good job with like just having fun with like little side characters, and then just having like a good like back and forth with just like everyone. It seems like.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think their real friendship shows in this too, because aren't they real friends
yeah,
in
yeah.
real
They've been
life?
friends for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that also helps with like those little character moments too, because like if you've known someone for a long time, you can like bounce off each other really well, and then that translates really well into the story too.
Yeah. And I think that helps too with Miles and Ashley's relationship because um David and Ashley were both in Hamilton, and so Raphael would go and visit David all the time. And in that time, because David and Jasmine were both really good friends, Raphael would hang out with both of them, and so then they became really good friends with three of them. And so in this movie, Jasmine and Raphael are like husband and a wife, and they have a kid. And I feel like that friendship really helped elevate their relationship on screen because you can feel that they know each other and that they care about each other throughout the movie. And maybe like if they hadn't known each other, they would still be able to do that. But I feel like that added relationship really helped like sell that like they knew each other, they had like a history and just really helped sell the relationship overall. But speaking of Jasmine's character, what did you guys think of Ashley? Ashley, and I guess um, their son, Miles, and Ashley's son. I don't remember the name of the son, but I know that the actor's name is Ziggy, I think.
Gonna be completely honest, I thought it was their daughter at first.
Oh,
I thought he was their daughter. So then later in the and my mom did too. So later in the movie when they say like they're watching the news and then like Colin is like or not Colin, Miles is getting upset because they're like using the mugshot for the black man that was killed by the police officer
mm.
instead of just using a regular photo and he's like yelling about it and then she's like, "Hey, I just got him put to sleep." And I was like, "Him? Oh, that's their son? I thought that was their daughter." But that's besides the point. Uh
His name is Sean, by the way. I just saw Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I don't really have a lot to say about Ashley. Like, I mean, I felt she was a good supporting character, and it was cool to see that Miles, is able to, because it looks like he wants to be a dad and that he wants to raise his son. So, like, that's cool to see. Even like quote unquote like gangsters can be good fathers. So, like, or can at least try to be good fathers because there's a scene later on where Miles is like super irresponsible and it's like, ooh, yeah, like that's not good. But but they can at least try to be good fathers. So that was cool to see. And then like I mean, you know what? Yeah, why don't we talk about that scene? Did you want to bring
Yeah.
that up later or okay.
Yeah.
So like there's a scene where Miles has a gun and his son gets a hold of it, and that was super tense scene because like everybody's just like oh like he's looking at the gun like my mom was freaking out. She's like no 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 put the gun away, put the gun away, no no no. So it was like super tense, and then like he like points it like at his face and it's like no, and then like that's when is it Colin that runs forward and is able to get the gun away, or
I
was it
think so.
Miles?
It was Colin.
It was
Colin.
Colin?
Okay.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
so
because then she asks whose gun it is, and he says, Colin says it's not mine, it's Miles.
yeah, yeah,
And
so
then,
he yeah.
yeah. That scene was not. I did not.
Yeah, that was
Gun safety. If you're gonna have
yeah,
one, put it away in a safe, far away from children. Also, maybe
exactly.
just. Yeah. That scene was tense.
That's why I was like, because earlier when I was said, oh, at least he's being a good dad, it's like, okay, well, maybe he's not being the best dad because, yeah, that should never have been in a situation where his son got a hold of his gun.
Yeah.
And like that was, I don't blame Ashley for getting super pissed off at Miles and like kicking him out that night. Like I don't blame her at all because that is so scary.
Oh yeah.
Like man,
It's like that mistake or that thoughtlessness could have led to something terrible.
exactly. And like I've heard news stories about, unfortunately about children that have unfortunately passed away because they get a hold of their parents' guns and they accidentally shoot it off and it's just awful to hear about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the most like intense scenes in the whole movie. And
Oh
even
yeah.
like hearing the commentaries, like apparently even just shooting was like very, very hard. Like even the child actor Ziggy, like even he was like he didn't really want to do it, but like he was like, I mean, yeah, like I'll do it. It's part of the story, whatever. But like even he was like, "Ew, this is kind of hard to deal with a little bit." But yeah, I mean, just it's just one of those things where like as soon as you like I mean in a way it's like Chekhov's gun. Like as soon as you see the gun, like it's gonna come back in some way. And so like at first it's kind of played for laughs, like the very beginning of the movie, like oh like ah you mean this gun, and he's just kind of waving it around and being stupid with it, and then because he's careless with it and he doesn't really give it the importance that it deserves, then you get this situation where they're just having like a normal everyday night hanging out, and then the child gets a hold of it, and thankfully nothing bad happens. But yeah, just very bad scene, very bad situation. I guess not really bad, very bad scene, but yeah, and I think like you said, Ashley was very justified in her reaction to it, and then I think also the scene after the party when Miles finally comes back home and they like both Ashley and Miles are talking. I think that's another really like very good scene, and I feel like again it's like one of those scenes where you can tell that they're a really good relationship because I don't think just any relationship could have that conversation like the way that they had it
Exactly. Yeah.
and talk like actually talk through it and be honest with each other and even keep going and be fine. And I think that really goes to show how strong of a relationship they have. Um, but I think it's like even it's very poignant that she brings up like if you had asked me if you could buy a gun, like do you think I could have foreseen this situation happening? And there's a moment where like because Miles first says like I'm sorry, and then he was about to say I didn't mean to, and then he cuts back and he just says I'm sorry again and doubles down and just apologizes. Doesn't try to weasel out of it. Doesn't like he just accepts the blame. It's like yeah, I'm sorry. Like that was my bad. Were you gonna add anything else?
Well, I just want to say because I'm thinking about Miles and that scene in particular, and how you're saying, like it's a testament to how strong their relationship is if they can just talk about something. Once again, I'm going to bring up the whole like stereotype because if you were to just glance at Miles without knowing anything about his character, with the whole like grills that he has in his teeth, you'd probably think, "Oh, okay, he's like some deadbeat that, doesn't probably is like, oh, can't hold a relationship like that." But the fact that he can, and that he has a kid and he wants to raise the kid, once again, it goes against the stereotypes, and I like it.
Yeah, definitely adds a lot of depth to his character.
Yeah, because there are people out there that may look like that, and you may have judgments like already prejudging them about them, but you never know what exactly a person is like until you sit down and actually talk with them.
Yeah, and I think that that's part of what like I mean it's a very simple sort of idea, and it's something that even like kindergartners are taught like don't judge a book by its cover, but yet seemingly it's so impossible for and not just
Exactly. Yeah.
like just everyone to some degree, whether we want to or not, like to some degree there's always some small bias here and there, but it's just on how you act or react to your internal biases that matter really. It doesn't matter. I think I heard this in the commentary. Someone brought this up. It was like, it doesn't matter if you think that you're not racist or anything. What matters is how you react when you think certain things and how you, or maybe it wasn't in the commentary. I don't know, but I heard this somewhere recently. But yeah, it's like it doesn't matter if you think you're not racist. What matters is how you react to your thoughts and feelings of your biases and like how you react to those things. And I think that's like very important and prevalent thing here in this movie. Which leads us into a good connecting point to Val because like a big part she plays a big part in like this aspect of the movie of talking about identity and like bias and like the whole I mean the title of the movie Blind Spotting goes into like the whole face facing face facing thing that she like talks about where you can see like you can see two things at once but you can't perceive both at the same time. And so it kind of plays into like how I mean basically just like bias. Like you can see how like for example, like one example would be like how you can see how Colin and Miles both look appearance wise and make judgments, but you're not getting like the whole picture where like once you get to know them, like you see they're very different than what you might assume from their outward appearance. Or like if you
Exactly.
if you just took like the one scene of like Colin beating up the guy at the bar, that's not the whole picture. Like you would get a completely different perspective of who he is just from that, as opposed to like seeing who he is as a whole person. And so yeah. What did you guys? If you have any strong feelings about Val at all, what did you think of that character?
Well, I wanted to mention because you had referenced the title of the movie Blindspotting, and I did like how they tied that in to that part of the script during that scene where Colin calls Val and they have that conversation. That's what she brings up, the whole like blind spotting. Like that was a cleverly written scene. I did like that.
Yeah, I always like I like when more so than when they just say the name of the movie. I like when they work it in somehow to like mean something more than just name dropping it. Like, what are we, some kind of Suicide Squad? Like, that's lazy.
Roll credits.
Yeah, I agree. I like when movies tie the title into whatever the story is instead of just like name dropping it. Although I always like be like I know Cinema Sins always dings it when a character says the movie title, but I see that as a win because like obviously it's title for a reason, and this reason is blind spotting and with the vase. And she points out to Colin that he might have a blind spot for Miles. So it all works really well together.
It does.
Agreed. Yeah. I was gonna say.
Also,
Oh
a
yeah.
note, since I'm a graphic designer, I could the vase face thing, like, is very interesting because like, when you design something, you don't always, like, see that, like, the FedEx logo, there's a hidden arrow in it, and, like, even for those other, like, optical illusions, you don't always see both at the same time, and I've never really thought about it that way. It's like, whatever your mind sees first is kinda what you're, like, sticking with, like, Val's character mentions, is like but then if you take more time to look at it, you can see the other side of things.
Yeah. I think that's well put, and I agree. I think our design brain kind of makes that aspect a little bit from that perspective even more interesting. Just because, yeah, I mean, the hidden FedEx arrow is always when I first found out it, I was like, what? I've seen this logo for how long, and I never like noticed that. And now whenever I see it, like that's what I look at first, and then I look at the rest of it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
like, once you kinda know, like, uh, whatever is happening, that's what you see. So, like, for Colin, like, because of this movie, you don't see him as a criminal, you just see him as a person who got into a bad situation and has to live with those consequences, like and that he's actually a caring person, like, he cares about Val, and Miles cares about his family, but you don't necessarily see that first.
yeah. And I think also I think the relationship with Val and Colin is very interesting because you can tell that they still care about each other a lot. Whether it's between like in the little glances that they give each other, or like when Val goes to go redo Colin's hair, and like they're studying together and like they hug each other goodbye. Like you can tell that they care about each other, but also like you get to the end where like Colin just straight up asks Val like when she looks at him if she only sees the fight, and then she can't really respond because yeah, that's all she can see at that point. And it's sad, but I mean that's just how things are sometimes in life. And it's kind of interesting, I think, that like you have this character who's so well versed in all these ideas and concepts, and for all intents and purposes who seems to be like a good um responsible intelligent person, and even still like they still have like their own blind spots and stuff like that. So I think that was like an interesting idea for them to do with that character. So now that we like talked about the characters, we already kind of talked about this, but what did you guys think? And I wouldn't classify this, but just in the sense of like I don't know how else to describe this. This is how I will describe it. But how did you feel about this movie being kind of like a rap musical in a way?
So when I was first watching this movie, I didn't really get that vibe because like there are certain scenes where they just start rapping, and like I didn't really think much of it because like what I perceived from that is that just Colin's character is maybe he's into music and he just likes to, free what's it called? Like free verse? He just likes to free verse here and there. But then once again, I keep alluding to the end of the movie, but just the end of the movie was so powerful and so good. There's like a scene near the end of the movie where he starts rapping again. And I just remember thinking like, okay, this is a little odd. Like, why is he doing this now in this situation? Like, it felt a little out of place to me, honestly. But then now that you have somewhat given the context of, oh, this is kind of a rap musical, it makes a little more sense to me now.
Okay, that's fair. I will say that when I first watched this movie, I also didn't know that that was going to be like a big part of it. And so like it caught me off guard a little bit at first, but I didn't mind it too much. Also, I had the background of knowledge of like where I knew that David was part of clipping. So it I was like, okay, all right. I didn't realize like this was kind of like that, but like I'm all here for this marriage of like his music background with like this film project. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. I like that. Especially because he does a lot of like conceptual music and art or does a lot of conceptual music and albums. And so I thought this was kind of like an interesting way to kind of tackle something like that, but like in a film format. But that being said, I also think that rap is in a way very similar to poetry and can be very poetic on its like in its own right. And so I think more so than anything, more so than it being like a rap musical, I think it could also just be just that these characters like that's how they express themselves. That's how they're able to release these thoughts and these feelings that they have, and it's just in a way it's basically just like instead of like writing poems or just like saying poems, it's creating these raps which are basically poems to express their thoughts and their feelings. So I think that's like a very interesting and it very interesting unique way, especially in film, but also for and again like I'm not saying like everyone is like this or that's even like a very common thing in Oakland, but like it's just kind of a way to differentiate that like this very like this like cultural mixing pot of people and cultures and ideals kind of coming together and making this very interesting setting, and then like these characters that are are a product of that, and then them having this as like their own way of kind of expressing how they're feeling and thinking and things like that. So thought it was kind of unique.
I can't think of like any other film that has like done this before. Like it's very sing-songy, but not in like a traditional musical sense. But like I've mentioned before, there's like a flow. So maybe more films should do this because it, like you said, like both of you've like said throughout this whole conversation, like it's very interesting and it makes sense because if they're into music, the creators are into music, it like transfers over to this very well.
Yeah, and I think that because the leads were like they wrote the movie and they produced it and they like starred in it. They had I mean it's their voices like that are coming out the most throughout in the project, and and not even just in the writing and everything else and the performances, but they also had a big hand in choosing, like I said earlier, the music or the musical artists that appear in the movie and also like the music that plays in the movie. So I definitely feel like they're they're rapping and then also like leading into like subsequent scenes where music plays, like just background checks and things like that. I think I don't know if they did it on purpose necessarily, but like you said, they did a really good job of like kind of building sort of a rhythm, whether again like necessarily on purpose or not, but like they like specifically chose certain songs and things like that. So whether it was on purpose or not to create that sort of rhythm, I think they did a good job of like creating like a nice flow between the certain scenes with like certain raps and then other scenes with like just like music playing in the background, and then going back to like other scenes with like more rap and things like that. And also, I thought it was interesting how it's not just like traditional rap. How people like when you hear the word rap, like you probably have an idea of, oh well, rap is like this or rap is like that. But again, this is more of like just kind of like poetic, like spoken word um, rap, where like I think the most clear picture of this is in the scene where they're trying to move the stuff out of that like abandoned house, and like it's almost a whole wonder from the moment they walk in until like when they're doing stuff, but it's just very like melancholy. Colin just kind of rapping kind of quietly, but also kind of just fits the vibe of like the scene. Just very thoughtful and slow, and it just kind of it goes well with like what's happening in the moment, and so I think they did a really nice job with kind of changing the vibe and the beat according to like what's happening and what's going on with the characters and things like that. But yeah. So that being said, what did you guys think of the overall setting of Oakland and just all the side characters and things like that? Did you guys have any favorite side characters, any favorite like side moments or anything like that?
I don't really know much about Oakland, but I did like the opening montage with like I think it was classical music and they were just showing different places and people doing whatever they do. I liked that. And then I liked the houses. They're very like each house has a specific character to them. And they're very colorful. There was some really colorful houses and I was like, all houses should be painted random colors. Like that's so cool. But like um then they go to like the hipster party and it shows a shot of these two like plain white square boring houses next to these like houses with um like decks, not decks, de- porches and like columns and like those like windows that are like trapezoids or whatever. And it's like that house has a character next to these like plain boring houses. It was an interesting contrast. And um I think all the side characters were interesting too. Like definitely made it like seem like real. Like I think we've mentioned that before throughout the conversation as well as like this movie feels real. And I'm not really sure how Oakland is portrayed in other films. So like I don't really have anything to compare it to. But I thought it was an interesting uh they showed it in an interesting way.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Oakland either, other than that all of their sports teams seem to be moving to Las Vegas for whatever reason. But I will mention that like Miranda just said, I one thing that I did notice throughout the film's setting were the houses, like and the architecture. Like that really did stand out to me, and that did help kind of give the setting a more unique feel or a more unique feel than just being, like standard like city or whatever. But yeah, no, I mean the characters in terms of like the residents, like once again we talked about like Wayne Knight, like he was kind of fun, and then the guy at the quickie store was was also a little fun as well. So I I really think that the film setting did help alleviate it and make it stand out more for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. Again, like I've never been to Oakland, but from what I know, because they shot a lot of the movie, if not all of the movie, I think, in Oakland. So definitely lent to a lot of authenticity. Like I think all of the shots from the beginning montage, I believe, are all from Oakland. And other movies that would be a good reference to like kind of seeing different sides of Oakland would be Black Panther, the first one, because Killmonger's from Oakland, and that's like where like the scenes where like when you see the flashbacks back, like when he's at his apartment with his dad and stuff like that, like that's in Oakland. And then another movie. set in Oakland is Fruitvale Station, which was another Ryan Coogler movie. I think it was his directorial debut, actually. So yeah, so those are other good examples of movies set in Oakland, but or well, in the case of Black Panther, partially set in Oakland because it's also mostly set in other parts of the world. Um, but yeah, and I think they did a really good job capturing the character of the film, and not because like I mean all cities have a reputation, and from like things that you hear online and like on the news and things like that, like you would think that Oakland is like this terrible. It's like the same thing as like Chicago, where like it's the people portray it like it's like a war zone that you can't go and do anything in, and it's just like unlivable and blah 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 blah. But it's not like that. Like all cities are similar in a way, and so yeah, there are certain areas where like it's a bit more dangerous and you probably shouldn't go into, or at least like not be meandering and things like that. But like all cities, like I said, are livable and have like culture and have like melting pots and or are melting pots, I guess I should say. And it's just like a blending of different cultures and different people and things like that. So they'll have their own character, but from what I know, like it seems like this did a really good job of portraying Oakland in like a nice light of in like an honest and nice light. Um, and actually, the place where Miles and Ashley live, like that their apartment that's like right above like the convenience store, that's a location in Oakland. And in the commentary, the director said that apparently that area was kind of dangerous, but they thought that the location looked so nice and felt so you like felt so especially Oakland that they wanted to shoot there. So even though David and Raphael both kind of protested a little bit at first, like everyone kind of got on board, and it turned out all right, thankfully. So um I would say that my favorite side character, like biased, I would say that it would be George Watsky's character because I really like Watsky. But ignoring that, just choosing it for like the fun character part, I would say probably just it's hard, but I would say Dez, just because like I feel like both of his scenes were just kind of funny. Dez is the guy that at the very beginning of the movie when they're just like sitting in the what's it called? I was gonna say not a lowrider, but in like the pimped out car basically.
Oh yeah, that ridiculous Uber car.
Yeah,
That was
and
good.
then yeah, he's like, "Wait, this is an Uber?" And then you get like the gag where they get out, and it's just like this car on like 25-inch tires or something,
Yeah.
rims or whatever. That was kind of funny. And then later on, when like they get kicked out by Ashley, and they're out on the street, and like, "All right, I guess we're gonna go to this party then." And then like, "All right, let me call an Uber," and then he pulls up his like, and it's like, "No way!" And he goes to pick them up. Like
Yeah.
that was pretty funny.
Doesn't he say something like your chariot has arrived or something like
Yeah,
that or
something like
something
that.
along those lines? Yeah.
Yeah, he's fun. I like his enthusiasm too. So,
Yeah, I agree. He was fun.
and then just a couple of other cameos, I guess I'll bring up because we're talking about like different locals and stuff. So as they're walking after they leave Quickway at the beginning of the movie, they're like walking down a sidewalk, kind of rapping as they're like trying to get to the back to their truck so they can go home. There's a couple kissing to the left of the screen. That couple is actually Jonathan Groff and Emmy Raver Lampman. Jonathan Groff he's a friend of, well, they're both friends of David and Raphael. But Jonathan Groff, I believe, played the King of England in Hamilton. But also, most recently, he was one of the two dads in Knock at the Cabin. So I thought that was pretty cool because I've seen this movie a few times and I never, I mean, I don't know, it's just like a background extra. I didn't really pay too much attention to him. And then like after I watched it this last time, I was like, oh my gosh, it's him. I know, like I could see. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then Emmy, I'm not familiar with her. I'm sure she does some either acting or singing or something, but unfortunately, I'm not sure what her background is. They didn't really specify in the commentary, so. But yeah. So,
Oh,
all
hold on.
yes,
Okay, so King George, right?
yeah,
Played by what's his name?
Jonathan Groff.
Yes. So he voices a character in Frozen, but did you know that the director of this film worked on Frozen 2 and Raya the Last Dragon and Encanto?
I did not know that he worked on Frozen 2 or Encanto, but I did know that he did. He was like co-directed Raya. I did know that. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool though.
Yeah, I found that out by reading all the Wikipedia pages. I was like, huh, multiple Disney people, because Daveed Diggs voices Sebastian in the Little Mermaid remake.
Oh,
And
I
then you
didn't know
got
that.
Lin-Manuel Miranda over there doing like Moana and stuff. And I was like, why is there so many Hamilton cast members working for Disney
I mean,
now?
I
It's
think
just
part of it
strange.
just like the like how popular Hamilton was probably was like, oh, we got to get these people in. Like, these people are talented. These people are good.
Yeah. Anyways, I found that fact out, so I wanted to share it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Interesting.
I do think because I was looking at this director's filmography. I was like, huh, I wonder if he's made anything since then. And it was like it was cool but odd to see that like everything he's done since this movie has basically been like an animated Disney movie. Like it's cool because I think this movie is really well done and I think he made a really great film, but it's just unfortunate in the sense of like it's cool that I guess this unique voice is spearheading like other big animated movies and he's getting consistent work and yada yada yada. But I would be very curious to see what other kind of movies he would make if he. I don't know if he can't or he's just choosing to do this or something, but it'd be very cool to see what else he could do with like hopefully like at least a slightly higher budget, but like another like live action movie or something like that. But that being said, um, before we get to talking about the ending, would you guys say that this film has only gotten more relevant as time has gone on since it released in 2018?
It's not even a question. Of course it has. Because I kind of mentioned it in my first impressions, but I'm just really curious how the reaction to this movie would have been if it released in 2020.
Yeah. Well, it's like it's interesting to think about because like 2020 was I feel like in a way, and there's been unfortunately numerous moments like this, but like it really did feel like it was like the straw that broke the camel's back in regards to everything that happened that summer with like George Floyd and like the BLM movements and everything. But if I remember correctly, 2014 and 2015 were also like really bad years in regards to um, black people just being killed by the police, like being murdered for not doing anything.
Yeah, that's always been an issue, but like you said, it's 2020 was put it plainly, the straw that broke the camel's back, like you had just said. So
But but yeah, and so I feel like I mean, there's just so many different. Unfortunately, again, there's just so many different events that you could say that this kind of took inspiration by. But like, I mean, yeah, that's why I feel like this movie is still so relevant and unfortunately will stay so relevant for a long time. I keep saying unfortunately, but I mean,
well,
like,
you're
yeah,
right though, because it keeps happening, and it's awful that it keeps happening.
yeah. But but yeah, and so because the events that occur in this film are so cookie cutter to what happens in real life. I mean, yeah, I just feel like this movie was relevant when it came out, and it hasn't been that long. It's only been like 5 years, but I mean, still, like, it will probably keep becoming or being relevant and continuing to become even more relevant as time goes on, which in a way is a testament to like, the filmmaking here and the writing and the performances and the story that they try to tell with these characters and everything, but also just unfortunately a byproduct of the subject matter of the film and then also just real events. But yeah, I guess getting to the thing that we've been kind of building up to the whole discussion, what did you guys think of the ending? Specifically, like the part that I guess you could call it showdown between Colin and the cop who killed the unarmed black man at the beginning of the movie.
So, yeah, I got some things to say about the ending. The ending, by far, in my opinion, was the best part of this movie. It was such a powerful scene because yeah, you got them cleaning out the house, and then like he's looking through the pictures, and you just know that when he picks that picture up and you just see Colin's face, you know it's the police officer that killed the black man in front of him. So it's like, oh, like once you figure that out, it's like, oh, what's he gonna do? So like he heads downstairs and he finds him, and the whole time I'm just thinking, what are you doing, man? Like you're you're a mover. Like you shouldn't be like just going through people's houses like this. I know, but I understand why he's doing it because like he witnessed this man murder someone right in front of him. So, and then like you get to the part where he pulls the gun out on the police officer, and I'm just thinking, oh my god, like there's no coming back from this, Colin. If you do something, like there's just no coming back. And this is where I felt like the rapping was kind of, because he starts rapping, and this is where I felt like it was kind of weird. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you rapping in this situation? Like this is a very like tense, serious situation right here, and you're rapping. It's kind of odd. But when I understand the concept of it, that it could be a rap musical, then now that scene, it makes a little more sense for him to be rapping in that scenario. But when I was first watching it just felt a little odd. But like he just, it's so good because like he is going up to him to face him. He has the gun pointed at him, and he's rapping, and then, like if you listen to the lyrics, like there's meaning within those lyrics. And then right there he says, difference between you and me, I'm not a killer. Boom. Amazing. Honestly, amazing. Like so freaking good. And then like I don't know, like I started to feel a little sympathy for the cop because he's like on the verge of tears, and he's like, I didn't mean to. Now, granted, I'm pretty sure Derek Chauvin, like the man that murdered George Floyd, he probably said I didn't mean to at one point. So I didn't really, I wouldn't have felt sympathy for him. But I don't know, just in that situation, like I don't know, I just felt a little shred of sympathy for the cop right there. So, but that's just such a good scene, amazing scene right there.
I mean, I think in a way they're not necessarily trying to make you feel sympathy, but like it's definitely trying to make it seem like the police officer, like they're trying to portray that like he's a human being. Like, unfortunately, the difference between a police officer and a regular civilian making a mistake is that one person can I mean, everyone can kill each other. Like that's, but police officers have a much more. They have direct access to deadly weapons, basically. So like, it's much easier for them to make a bad judgment and end up killing someone. And unfortunately, it's way too high a number. But like, I think the idea of the scene is just that, like, you're not like it's not necessarily supposed to get like make you feel sympathy for the officer, but it's just more to be like, well, he is a human being at the end of the day. Like yes, you can, I guess, like in a way, yeah, feel a little bit of sympathy, but also, I mean, you come to terms with like what he did, and it's like, well, I mean, I feel bad for you because you're a person, you made a judgment call, and it was the wrong judgment call to do, but you also murdered someone. Um,
Exactly, yeah. That's why it's a little conflicting with
and
the
also,
feelings that I was feeling. Sorry.
no, yeah, yeah, no, you're good. But also, like, I feel like that's why Miles's comment after he says "I didn't mean to" is so good, because like Miles says, um "Are you sure?" And it goes all again, it goes all the way back into like the whole blind spotting thing of, um historically, police officers have targeted black people, unfortunately, and it's just like been like a whole thing throughout history. And so in a way, like, they're I mean, that it's not in a way, black people are targeted more than other people by the police. And so in this instance, You get to see this police officer who is like on the job, and then he's handling the situation, and then he ends up shooting this unarmed black man, and it was the wrong judgment call. But like in his professional life, like this is what basically what he's been trained to do, and so maybe him as a person, when he's had time to think about it and things like that, he might think to himself like, oh well, I'm not like this. Like I'm not what these things that these people say I am, and things like that, whatever. And, like, you can see that it's tearing him apart, but also it could be a lot of different things. It could be that he got caught, like, he was seen and, like, it's posted all over the news, and, like, he doesn't want people to think of it. So that could be also that part, not just that he feels bad. It could also just be he feels bad because people are judging him for acting. Um, and so in a way that's kind of like, well, that's not as, like, as nice of a, "Oh, well, he just feels guilty because he did it." Again, we can't know because we don't know enough about this character, but just throwing that out there. But I feel like food for thought. But yeah, I think that him saying like, "Oh, I didn't mean to," like, okay, yeah, it's understandable, but like Colin says, like, "Are you sure?" Like
Yeah,
he played off of his biases and it ended up killing someone basically.
exactly. And but the thing once again, the part in that scene that gets me to feel a little sympathetic towards the officer is just the way he delivers the line. Like I didn't mean to, and like he's literally on the verge of like tears and whatnot, and like the shakiness and whimpering in his voice. That's kind of what got me right there. Because like yeah, like if it's all about how you say things because like if he would have said that in a much more different tone, then I definitely would not be feeling as bad for him for sure.
Oh yeah, but again, that's just kind of like giving the idea or playing off the idea that like at the end of the day, like we are all just human beings, we're all people, and we all are all complex, and so again, like deep down inside, like he might genuinely be like, I really didn't mean to do this, like I was just acting in the moment. But again, like he was acting on biases, and that led to a tragedy.
Yeah.
um but going back to like what you were saying, how it felt kind of odd, like the rapping at the end. I mean, yeah, again, like the whole movie, especially if you're going into it not knowing that it's kind of like this, probably throw you for a loop. But even in the lyrics of this, it's kind of meta in the sense of like it's commenting on why he's rapping. Um, because earlier in the movie, like they talk about how as far as I remember, like there's like part where like Miles and Colin are kind of talking about like rap and how it seems like people care more about when like a black person or a black man is talking when they're rapping, because like for white people especially, because it's like that's how people like actually listen to them and like care about what they're saying. um and so in like some of the lyrics for at the end, Miles like goes down to the basement and he like sees this confrontation, he's like, whoa, 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 and then Colin just says, what? I'm just talking to him. And he says, you said make it pretty, right? It's the bounce of it. They like the bounce of it. And so he's kind of like playing off the idea of like, oh well, like okay, so like if I want him to listen to me, oh let me rap to him. Like he'll actually listen to me if I'm rapping to him, because like white people are conditioned to like listen to what black people are saying through rap. So I was like, all right, well let me play to that. Let me rap to him, and maybe he'll like listen to what I have to say.
Oh,
And so
that's a cool. I mean, I don't know about the saying cool, but that's a that's an interesting way to perceive that. I never would have thought about perceiving it that way.
yeah, I just there's a lot of like this is very lyrically dense, and it's a very interesting way to like put all of this. But I thought I thought that was like a good way to kind of address at the end, like it's a very, very unique and well done confrontation. Like again, as we've said before, like I don't know if I've ever seen a confrontation like this in the movie, but it's just very cool to see. Again, I don't know, cool is the operative word, but very interesting way to like see this sort of dialogue be delivered. And then another there's this part where it's like, how come every time you come around, you monsters got me feeling like a monster in my own town. I say it while I'm rapping because everyone conditioned to listen to a rapping. And then so again, like playing off the idea that he's rapping because this is how people like pay attention, like listen to what like black people have to say,
Yeah.
and then hitting us till our headstone's stuck in the mud. We stuck it out. It turned us into some thugs. Got a whole city brand new, and they kicking us out. Maybe we should both break shit, make a fuss. I am both pictures. See both pictures. Don't be spotting. Don't be blind spotting me. See both pictures. So again, kind of playing directly like with the lyrics, playing directly into like the themes of the movie, and like how he wants to be perceived as like a whole three-dimensional human being and not just his appearance or not just like in his actions, but like as a like a three-dimensional person who has feelings and emotions and can think and has a personality and is like his whole history and isn't just like what you're seeing in the moment. It all builds up to the part where at the end where he says, "Ain't too hard to figure that you probably never felt the pressure of a black person, but you know what? I ain't never felt the pressures of a trigger. The difference between you and me is I ain't no killer."
Yeah, so powerful, honestly.
Yeah, so I've talked a lot. What about you, Miranda? How did you feel about the ending or the execution of the ending and everything like that?
Well, uh, you've both brought up like good points for the ending. Which like I'm not sure if I can really add anything more to it, but I did feel very tense during the end, especially when he finds the photo and figures it out. But um, like it's kind of like his breaking point. Colin's like breaking point. He's like finally able to say what he's been like feeling and everything in that moment because like earlier in the movies earlier in the movie it's just kind of about what he saw casually. Like he just mentions it in passing conversation and then it's never brought up and then he has like his nightmares which again never brought up. So it's kind of like the whole movie led to this point where he can finally say what he's been thinking and what it is like um for him and others um and it kind of gets to confront he does confront the cop that he saw. So I think it was a well done scene, and I probably need to rewatch this movie because there is a lot of like fast talking and like you you guys mentioned like the Oakland slang they were using. Um, so like I can't really talk much about what he's saying, but it's a well done tense scene.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. All right. Um, so does anyone else have any other scenes or anything in particular they want to talk about before we start to wrap up the show? All right. So then that'll do it for the discussion part. Now on to rating. So what would you guys rate Blind Spotting? How about we start with you, Dan?
I think I'm gonna go with a solid 4. I think this movie deserves a solid 4 because once again we've already talked about all the themes and messages that it has to say. It's very relevant in today's climate. I think this is kind of an important movie. I think everybody should watch this movie at least once because it is. I feel it's kind of important. And then, once again, acting's good, good writing. This discussion has really opened my eyes to a lot of other things in this movie that I didn't necessarily see before. So that was pretty cool to figure out. So yeah, just very very well made, solid movie. Give it a watch.
All right. A nice solid 4. Very cool. What about you, Miranda?
I'll give it a 4 as well.
Woo!
It's yeah.
A win for cinema.
Yeah, I mean, it's a well-made movie and it brings up important topics that need to be talked about and addressed. And it's well made and yeah. I mean, I'm not just going to put it on like I would put Scott Pilgrim on. Like it's not a casual viewing thing. It does take a bit of like energy and concentration to like watch and process. Um but yeah, overall I think a 4 works for this movie.
Right. Well, if it wasn't obvious enough, again, this is my pick, and it's one of my favorites for sure. Um, for the budget that it had, and just yeah, I guess just for the budget that it had, and for like the vision that they were like thinking about doing, I think they accomplished everything that they wanted to and that they needed to, and even like above that, I think they created something like truly unique. And again, like for the amount of money that they got, which was like 1.2 million, that's like nothing. So the fact that it came out as good as this came out, and the performances were um this good, and the creative voice and vision here being as special as they are, I think they truly created uh a piece of art that will forever like be relevant for a very very long time. And so if I even need to say this, I would highly recommend that you check this out. um if you already watched it, watch it again, because this is definitely a movie where you'll pick up on things, you'll notice things, you'll notice cameos, you'll notice lyrics, you'll notice dialogue, you'll notice background characters, you'll notice details in just B-roll shots of Oakland, things like just things that you didn't notice before. I can guarantee that the more you watch it, you'll notice more and more things. So um, I'm gonna give this a 4.5 out of 5, and the only reason I'm gonna dock the point 0.5 is because, unfortunately, given its budget, which again, for its budget, looks in is just in an incredible piece of art. Um, but I do feel like some of the production value is a little lacking, not in the production design or in how spaces are filled out, or in the costume design. I think like all those aspects are incredibly well done. I think that like every space felt lived in and real. All of the costumes felt authentic to the time frame when it's set in, like modern day, and just overall like everything, all of those things I think were incredibly well done. But I do think cinematically it was missing a little bit extra. I think if they'd had a little bit more money, and they could have maybe gotten either better cameras, or I don't know. I think it could have popped a little bit more, but I'm just gonna give it that little slight knock just for just that aspect. But otherwise, I think it's an amazing movie, and I would highly recommend you check it out. So that'll be a 4.5 out of 5. And then the Atomic Lizard's average score is it is a 4.16 out of 5, which Letterboxd will not take. So that is a 4 out of 5. Wow, I think the last 3 movies that we've done have been a 4.16 out of 5, which has led to a 4. That's kind of funny.
I
It's
smell a
possible.
trend.
I mean, our movies, I feel like they average 3, 4, 3 and 4s.
Oh, just wait till we get to the later half of the Showa era.
Yeah, I'm sure the Godzilla will
Yeah.
drop that average, but
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about blind spotting. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes on more new releases and favorites. If you're interested in hearing more, please check out our previous episodes, and as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizard. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.